Hey y'all, so in this video I'm gonna go over some methods that I use to find inspiration, take up space to make my sketchbook look thick with 10 C's, or just to have fun. I'm almost done filling up this sketchbook, so I wanted to go out with a bang and provide you guys some quality content while I'm at it. My first tip is to make fan art of your favorite celebrities or characters, whatever you want to do. I chose Lorde for my first page, so I looked up her name on Pinterest and chose whatever looked cool to me. When I look for reference pictures, I like to try and find interesting or dynamic poses and angles that really help me find different ways to challenge myself. Generally, I look for pictures with interesting contrast between highlights and shadows, kind of like chiaroscuro. And before you come at me, I know none of these really look like her. I'm just really out of my portrait groove right now, but at least it's just for practice, you know? So my second person was Rico Nasty, and I did the same thing where I just looked her up on Pinterest and drew whatever looked interesting. And oh yeah, I used micron pens to ink this, and I tried to focus on a lot of hatching and whatnot, and I did end up filling the background in with black just to make the spread look a little more full. So when in doubt, fill in the background with a solid color. And then I just added some stars and stuff to make it look all outer space-like. So here's the finished product for tip number 1. On to tip number 2. Number 2, draw your feed. This is really helpful for me when I'm bored and I don't want to make a big effort to find inspiration. I honestly think the hardest part of this exercise is just trying not to get distracted by social media while I'm actually on the apps, but it's a great way of finding random stuff that's kind of personalized for you. So for this exercise, I actually did 2 spreads because I wanted to try 2 different social media platforms to see which one I preferred more. For the first one, I used Tumblr, and you might be able to tell because a lot of the drawings are kind of aesthetically pleasing. I used red and green Muji pens because I wanted to use complementary colors. I started most of the stuff with red and then emphasized the shadows by combining the red and green. I don't really like the right page as much because I think I colored too much stuff in, but overall I think it doesn't look half bad. Here's how it turned out. For this second spread, I decided to use my Instagram Explore page, which I actually don't utilize often. Sometimes it's filled with memes, and sometimes it's jewelry and pretty girls and witchy stuff. Sometimes it's a solid 50-50 of both. I wanted to add more texture to this one, so I glued down some paper, then I used Crayola crayons. I don't know how I feel about this spread, but I'm glad I got to experiment with it. Third tip, collage. This is honestly so fun, and I definitely recommend this one if you have any spare newspapers and magazines lying around. A bonus is that you get to read some of the articles here and there, which is so fun to me personally. My process for collages is to loosely cut or rip out pages until I have enough stuff, and then I go back and really cut out the edges more precisely and lay everything out before finally gluing it all down. Pro tip, I'd recommend using a glue stick as opposed to bottle glue because it doesn't wrinkle up your paper as much, and at the end, I like to add little doodles with Sharpie or Posca pens. I don't really put too much thought into collages, and I tend to watch something while I'm working on them, so it's a really good activity for just relaxing my brain but still being creative at the same time. Tip number 4, listen to a podcast and just draw whatever they're talking about, whatever imagery pops into your head. My favorite podcast to listen to is the NPR TED Radio Hour because there's no specific order to the episodes, and I learn something new every single time I listen. You can also do this with music, but I personally find that when I listen to podcasts, there's more solid visual imagery that comes with it. This episode was about how different businesses and corporations are battling for your attention every time you engage with technology, how we see way more ads than we think, and finding mindfulness through it all. I'll link this episode below if you want to check it out. Here's the finished product for the 4th one. I think it turned out alright. 5th tip, go crazy with your materials. Use tools you wouldn't normally use different materials to experiment with, and just have fun with it, really. I listened to a podcast again for this one, but it didn't influence my art as much. I glued down paper for texture and painted with my fingers to get some cool textures as well. I also played with the glue a little bit. I made marks with a twisty tie thing. This is great for adding some extra thickness to your sketchbook as it's layering down a lot of different things on one spread. I ended up drawing with a Sharpie and some Posca markers on top once it dried, just to kind of solidify it and add a little more than just blobs of paint. Number 6, figure studies. I used Line of Action, which is a figure study website. I'll link it below. This site is really cool because it gives you timed sessions of customizable categories, which is perfect for getting over artist block and just getting better at anatomy and poses. There are a lot of different options besides poses like hands, animals, specific expressions, and scenes to draw. For this one, I did 2 spreads, one with bodies using a pilot pen and a Posca marker for the background, which I actually really like. It's cool to see the outline and shapes that certain poses make. Here's how that one turned out. The second spread was just hands done with Tombow markers, which I personally did not dig as much. I don't know, I had just woken up for this one and I was just in need of a warm-up and was not really feeling it, so that explains the lack of quality for this one, I guess. Number 7, blind contour. So this one is a really quick method to fill up space without paying any mind. I used some images from my references board on Pinterest, which I can also link below, and I just went at it. I don't know if blind contours are supposed to be one continuous line or not, but either way, I didn't look at it, so I think I did it right. I don't know. Some of them turned out very, very wonky, but some of them looked kind of cool, kind of swag, so I just used an 08 micron pen for this, and it probably took about 10 minutes total. Tip number 8, random word generator. I honestly don't fancy stuff like this, but I thought I'd give it a shot. So I got the words tea and computer from a word generator site, and I looked up both of the words on Pinterest and drew certain things that came up. I used a dark blue Muji pen for this one, and I almost like the design because it reminds me of fine line tattoos, which I'm actually pretty interested in. I'm not in love with the result, but I think that it was definitely worth a shot, and 2 finished pages are better than 0. Tip number 9 is to do an artist study. I had to do a handful of these for AP Art, and it really made me see details in other artists' work that I hadn't noticed by just looking at it. Of course, I want to credit the artist, so the artist I studied is Omer Oberlin. I'm gonna plug their Instagram below, so please go check it out because their work is absolutely breathtaking. Typically, in an artist study, I like to include little notes about their work, and I like to recreate or sketch out a few pieces of theirs. For school, I might print out 1 or 2 if my teacher lets me, but do whatever helps you study and learn. Also, if you do end up posting something like this, I would recommend asking for the artist's consent first, just in an effort to prevent any conflict. Most people appreciate it, but some might not, so it's just good to check through DM or email first. I think it's fine to do personally for yourself, but sharing it on social media could be a different story. And finally, tip number 10, draw your workspace. This is really challenging because of the perspective. You're like drawing your hand, drawing while you're drawing, but it's fun at the same time. I like to think of it as recording or even journaling your current state. If you have junk all over your desk, don't leave it out. That's the stuff that makes us, us. Being able to look back on your old work and see what your space actually looked like at the time is quite wonderful, and it's fun to compare, you know? So here's the finished flip through. I'm super glad I was able to make this video because I'm actually almost finished with this sketchbook, and if you saw my sketchbook tour video, well, you know that I've yet to do that in my 17 years of living on this earth. So that's kind of exciting. I have less than 20 pages left, and these tips really helps me push through. I tend to lose motivation when I get closer to the end, so making this video almost forced me, in a good way, to power through. This is probably the longest sketchbook I've done too, with almost 100 pages. Okay, so you might be wondering, who composed these super cool tunes in the background? I'm gonna put y'all on. It's actually one of my coworkers at Papa's Pizzeria, Hubert. I'm gonna plug their Bandcamp on the screen and link it below as well, so please go check their music out. They're also in this thing on Adult Swim called Bottom Text, which is all about memes and is definitely worth a watch. Also, real quick, it's artist shoutout time. First up, we got Izzy, aka Garfield Spit, who happens to be a mutual of mine, and I just love her work so much. Look at that. Wow, sexy. Alright, next up is Alice, who I chose from random followers, and yo, look at her go. You're doing great, love. Alright, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I love you all so much. I hope you're having a wonderful day or night. Like and subscribe if you're feeling the vibes. Alright, bye-bye. Love you.